In the early 1960s, one small car quietly changed the direction of automotive design. It did not roar like a V8 or wear a flashy Italian badge. It came from France, looked like a fiberglass pod, and put the engine in the middle, behind the seats, like a race car. The car was called the Matra Jet, and few people noticed at first. But this little car, with its strange name and quiet entry, would go on to become something very unexpected. The first production mid-engine road car in the world. The story of the Matra Jet began with René Bonnet. He had once partnered with Charles Deutsch to form a company called Deutsch et Bonnet, but they had a falling out. Bonnet believed in moving toward rear engines and fiberglass bodies, while Deutsch did not. So Bonnet left and started his own company, Automobiles René Bonnet. His new project was a small, sleek sports car with a mid-engine layout. He named it Jet, adding a silent D, so French people would pronounce it Jet, just like the English word. Clever, right? In 1962, Bonnet showed the first version of the car, the Jet 1. It had a Renault 8 major engine with 1,108 cubic centimeters, making about 70 horsepower. That may not sound like much, but the car only weighed around 1,350 pounds. It could reach speeds of over 105 miles per hour. The Jet was built on a steel backbone chassis and had a fiberglass body to keep it light. It had four-wheel disc brakes and double A-arm suspension. Not bad for a tiny car in the early 1960s. Bonnet even entered the Jet in the Le Mans race in 1962. One version had a smaller 996 cubic centimeter Gordini-tuned engine and managed to finish 17th overall, winning its class. That got some attention. But sadly, good racing results do not always pay the bills. Bonnet's company was struggling with money. Lucky, or unlucky, depending on how you look at it. Help came from a French aerospace and military company called Matra. They had been making the Jet's fiberglass bodies already, so they decided to take over the whole operation in 1964. Once Matra took over, they made some updates. The car got a longer rear, better cooling, and a bit more polish. The Jet 5 had the same 1,108 cubic centimeter engine. Then came the Jet VS, or Jet 5S, with a Gordini version of the same engine making about 94 horsepower. That version could hit 118 miles per hour. Later came the Jet 6, with a 1,255 cubic centimeter Gordini engine pushing about 105 horsepower. That one could do 130 miles per hour, which is pretty impressive, considering the thing weighed around 1,500 pounds soaking wet. In total, fewer than 1,700 Jets were made between 1962 and 1967. Only about 198 of those were built under René Bonnet's name. Matra built the rest. In 1965, the Soviet cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin was given a Jet VS by the French government, which made for one weird moment when the man who orbited the Earth was given a French fiberglass car with a Renault engine. The Jet ended production in 1967 and was replaced by the Matra 530. Today, not many people talk about it. But when you look at how many cars came later with the engine in the middle, like the Lamborghini Miura or the Lotus Europa, it is clear that the odd little French pod from the early 1960s got there first. The Jet may not have made a big noise, but it made history in its own quiet, mid-engined way. In the early 1960s, something strange was happening in the world of cars. On one side of the Atlantic, Italy was building sleek, handmade sports cars. On the other, America was making powerful V8 machines with big engines and bold designs. But what if someone tried to mix both worlds into one car? That is where the story of the Mechanica Apollo GT begins. A little-known car with a big idea, created by dreamers, built across continents, and nearly forgotten until collectors started whispering about it again. This is not a story of massive success, but of determination, craftsmanship, and a little bit of confusion between Italy and California. It all started in Oakland, California, with a man named Milt Brown. He had one goal: to build what he called an American Ferrari. Not exactly a modest dream, but he was serious about it. Milt teamed up with Ron Plescia, a young designer who sketched out a beautiful fastback coupe with a long hood and a short tail. Their car looked like it could hold its own next to Ferraris and Jaguars, but they needed someone to build it. That is when they found Frank Reisner, who ran a small company called Mechanica in Turin, Italy. The first prototype of their new car was finished in February 1962. It had an aluminum body made by Carrozzeria Corna, and Ron Plescia did the original design. Later, famous Italian designer Franco Scaglione made a few changes to clean up the lines, like reshaping the grille and adjusting the side windows. The result was a car that looked fast even when it was parked. The car was called the Apollo GT. It was built by International Motor Cars, or IMC, in California. They shipped the first prototype from Italy to San Francisco and showed it at the Los Angeles Auto Show in early 1963. The price was about $7,000, which was more expensive than a Jaguar E-Type at the time. Under the hood, the Apollo GT used aluminum V8 engines made by Buick. The first models came with a 3.5-liter V8 that made around 145 horsepower. Later models used a 4.9-liter version with up to 215 horsepower. The engines were paired with either a 4-speed manual or a 2-speed automatic transmission. The car could reach a top speed of about 150 miles per hour if you dared to try. The chassis had a ladder frame design, and most of the suspension parts also came from Buick. The car's body changed from aluminum to steel as production went on. Interiors were built by Carbondio and had hand-stitched leather and details you would expect in a much more expensive car. Wheelbase was 98 inches, the length was 175 inches, width 66 inches, and it weighed about 2,271 pounds. That is about the same as 3 grand pianos. IMC managed to build only 42 cars before they ran out of money in 1964. After that, Vanguard Motors in Texas picked it up and sold the car as the Vetta Ventura. Around 42 of those were made. Then Apollo International in Pasadena tried to revive the brand again, but only built a few more before legal trouble shut it down. In total, about 88 cars were ever made. 77 coupes, 11 convertibles, and 1 2+2 prototype. The Apollo GT may have been a rare sight on the road, but it left behind a curious story. Designed in California, built in Italy, powered by Buick, and assembled with hope. Maybe not the smoothest business plan, but definitely an interesting drive. Under the bright Italian sun of the 1960s, a slim coupe rolled out of Modena and dared to change the rules. It was the Detomaso Vallelunga. Hidden inside its small frame were bold ideas, voices, and a journey from lost racetracks to the Museum of Modern Art. Founder Alejandro Detomaso sketched a backbone that used the engine as a stressed part. He showed the spine at Turin in 1963 after laps at Autodromo di Vallelunga. Carrozzeria Fisore joined. Mario Fisore ran the workshop, and Franco Maina shaped panels. 3 Berlinetta prototypes appeared, weighing 1,601 lbs on a 2,315 wheelbase. They carried the name Vallelunga 1500 Spider after the roof was removed. Business strains pushed the project north. Alejandro Detomaso purchased a stake in Carrozzeria Ghia, so the chassis and molds left Modena for Turin. Designer Giorgetto Giugiaro narrowed the nose, swapped fiberglass for aluminum, and shortened rear overhang. Around 50 cars rolled out between 1964 and 1967. One sat in the Museum of Modern Art in New York, surprising visitors who came for paintings, but met an Italian machine among them. The power plant was a Ford Kent, 1,499 cubic centimeter engine, fed by twin Weber 40 DCOE carburetors. With 10.3 compression, it produced 105 horsepower. At 1,601 lbs, the car reached 134 miles per hour. A Volkswagen 4-speed transaxle served most owners, while racers fitted a Hewland 5-speed. Suspension used Lotus arms, standard Triumph uprights, Renault steering, Campagnolo and Girling brakes. Variants kept the workshop busy. Vallelunga 1500 Spider stood beside the Berlinetta, followed by the Targa, called Pampero. Track hopefuls saw the Sport 1000 and Competizione, a 2000, spin through corners. The same steel spine later stretched for the Mangusta and Pantera, proving strength. Earlier, René Bonnet Jet charted the mid-engine path, and the Ferrari Dino and Lotus Elan watched as Detomaso taught about lightweight and stiff structure. Racing miles were few, but colorful. Franco Bernabé drove a Berlinetta to victory at Coppa Setecoli on the Vallelunga circuit. Bernabé and Ridolfi tackled the Mugello course, but retired. Dan Gurney entered 1,000 kilometers of Monza, yet never took the green flag. Fielding and Drummond hoped for glory at Spa, but also missed the start. Even with limited results, the lightweight chassis impressed mechanics who joke at corners faster than gossip in the paddock. Collectors keep chasing the survivors. Gooding Pebble Beach sold chassis 807 DT0128 for $475,000, while Bring a Trailer listed chassis 106 at $205,000. Riders from supercar nostalgia, road and track, and autocar admire the steering, yet blame narrow footwells. With fewer than 50 cars, the Vallelunga remains sight, but turns heads without raising its voice. In the early 1960s, something unusual started brewing between two companies that were not expected to work together. One was Ferrari, the high-performance sports car maker from Maranello, and the other was Innocenti, better known for making scooters like the Lambretta and small cars under license from British Motor Corporation. What came out of this unexpected team-up was a car most people have never heard of, the Innocenti 186 GT. Only two were ever made, and only one survives today. The car had Ferrari power, Italian design, and a story that almost sounds made up, except it is completely true. Ferdinando Innocenti, the founder of Innocenti, had a dream in the early 1960s. He wanted to create a small grand touring car, or GT car, that could rival more expensive models, but be more practical and compact. So in 1963, he went to Enzo Ferrari himself with this idea. Surprisingly, Enzo agreed. Ferrari engineers, including Sandro Colombo and Franco Rocchi, started working on the engine in Maranello. They designed a 1,788 cubic centimeter, 60-degree V6 engine. It had one overhead camshaft for each bank of cylinders and used 3 Weber 38 DCN carburetors. The engine could make around 156 horsepower at 7,000 revolutions per minute, which was quite a bit for a car that weighed much less than most Ferraris of the time. Meanwhile, the body design was handed to the famous design house Bertone. A young designer there, Giorgetto Giugiaro, created the sleek 2+2 coupe shape. The front engine and rear-wheel drive layout sat on a steel tubular frame, with independent double wishbones in front and a live axle with leaf springs and reaction rods in the rear. The car had 4-wheel disc brakes and rode on Borrani wire wheels with 175/14 Pirelli Cinturato tires. In total, the car was about 165 inches long, 63 inches wide, and just under 50 inches tall, with a wheelbase of 91 inches. The plan was to mass-produce the Innocenti 186 GT, and even a second unibody version was in development. But in 1964, things took a turn. Italy was facing a recession, and Innocenti's car dealer network was too weak to support such a bold new model. The project was quietly cancelled. Only 2 prototypes were made. One was later destroyed. The other sat forgotten until 1994, when Ferrari historian Ermanno Cozza found it and saved it from becoming scrap metal. Today, that one surviving Innocenti 186 GT prototype sits in the Ferrari Museum in Maranello. It has become known among some car fans as the Secret Dino because of its Ferrari-built V6 engine that shared design traits with the Dino engines of later Ferrari and Fiat models. It is not a Dino, but it is close in spirit. A car that almost was, but never got its chance. So what do you call a Ferrari that is not a Ferrari, designed by Giugiaro before he became famous, and sold by a scooter company? You call it the Innocenti 186 GT. And then you wonder how many more strange stories like this are hiding in the corners of car history.